In this video, we are going to work on showing the books image in our recycler view and make our items in recycler view to seem a little bit prettier. For showing our books images, I'm going to use an external library called Glide. It's an image loading library which we can find by googling Glide Android. The first link is probably our needed link. If I go to this GitHub page, if I scroll down a little bit, I can see the required dependencies that I need to add to my Gradle file. Also, there are some documentations in here as well. I suggest you take a look at this page and also the documentation page for the Glide if you have any questions. But if not, that's okay. We are going to cover everything that we need from Glide. Okay, I copied the dependencies in this build.gradle module app. I'll paste it. Make sure you are in Android view to see this Gradle app file. Inside this dependency brackets in here, I will paste my implementations. When you change something in your Gradle file, you need to sync your project once again. I'm going to sync it. Make sure you have a solid internet connection because it's going to download some stuff from internet. Okay, seems like Glide has been added to our project. Let's minimize all of these and let's use it. In order to use Glide in our project, inside this adapter view, I can come to this unbind holder method. In here, I can type glide.with. I need to pass the context which I received from the constructor of this adapter class. Then I need to say as bitmap. I want my image to be shown as bitmap. That's a necessary and not important thing. Then I need to load the image from some image URL. I need to pass the image URL of my book. For that, I can say books.get and pass the position as index. And after that, we can use the get image URL method that we created in our book class. Then I need to locate the view that I'm going to show my image in. For that, I can say .into and I can pass holder.bookimage as the view. That's done. That's all the Glide need to work. Notice that if your image URL has some problem, that's fine with Glide. Glide is smart enough to know the corrupted image URL. And if your image URL has some problem, Glide can cope with that and can show, for example, some placeholder. For now, that's all we need from Glide. Okay, now if we run our application, we should see the book images. I'm going to run it on this Pixel 2 with an API of 27. If I click on this see all books, we are not getting our images, and that's because we forgot to add the permissions here in our manifest file. We will talk about most of the permissions that we need in our application, but basically whenever you want to access the user's camera or microphone or geolocation, or if you want to access the internet via the user's device, you need to add the permissions in here. I can add the permission by using uses permission and then type the permission type. In here, the needed one is android.permission.internet. Okay, I can close it. As simple as that. Inside this manifest tag and outside the application tag. Now, if I run the application once again, I should see the images this time. By clicking on this see all books, I can see that Glide is trying to download all the book images. Also, if I click on the name of the book, I should see a toast message that we have created in our adapter class in the unbind view holder method. But still my recycler view is ugly and I don't like it yet. I want it to be round, maybe some 3D shapes. For that, I can use another external library called card view. Let's search for it and let's implement it in our project and we'll see what that is. For that, I can simply search for card view Android. The first one is probably our needed link. This is the official Android developer website. I'll scroll down to the dependencies. I can copy it and paste it in my Gradle app file. But that has some problems. We have faced this problem before. We need to change it to our targeted SDK version, which is 27 in here. I'm using 27.1.1 and I'll sync it and see if it's working or not. Once again, you need the internet connection in order to sync your project. Seems like it's working. Now let's see what it is. Basically, a card view is an UI element which I can use in this XML file. For example, instead of this relative layout, I can define it to card view. This one in here. But because we are using card view instead of relative layout, this layout below attribute is no longer available and our text view is coming over our image. For that, we can create another relative layout in here and set the width and height to match parent and move this image view and text view inside that relative layout. Now that we are in here, let's give our image view some placeholder as well. I'm going to use this IC launcher icon that I have in my project. Also, we have some other attributes available in the card view. For example, I have a corner radius. I can say, for example, 15 dp and an elevation, card elevation. For example, let's say 10 dp. We will see what those are. We will see what those are when we run our application. For now, I'm not going to explain. Also, let's add a margin in here. Let's say 5 dp. I don't think I need this padding, so let's leave it. Now, if I run my application, by clicking on this See All Books button, I can see the differences. For example, this corners of this card view has some radius shape, which is this card corner radius attribute. Also, it seems like it has some shadow behind it. It's this one in here, card elevation, and you can see the general look of a card view in here. But this layout margin attribute doesn't seem to work in our recycler view, and I think I know the reason why. When we created this onCreateViewHolder method and when we defined this view object in here, I said that we don't need to pass anything as the root of our view. That's true, but this inflate method has multiple constructors. We need to pass the parent inside this constructor in order to follow the exact layout in here. For that, I can pass the parent view group in here. But because I don't need to pass anything as the root, I can say false. This inflate method has multiple constructors. Now if I run my application, I should see the margin as well. See all books, and I can see the 5 dp margin. Still, it doesn't seem perfect. I want all of my items to have the same width and height. For that, I'm going to change the width to 140 dp and the heights to, let's say, 170 dp. Also, let's center this image view as well. Center horizontal to true. Also, I don't want them to be in just one column. I want them in 2 columns. For that, as the layout manager, I can use something else. Instead of this linear layout manager, I can say grid layout manager. I need to pass the context, which is this activity that we are currently in, and the number of columns that I have. Let's run and see the difference. You can see the differences yourself. Our recycler view is much prettier right now. We have these 3D shaped cards via using the card view. Also, these are all centered. It has a shadow behind it. It has corners. It has pretty margins. It should be in 2 columns. Also, if there are more items, we can scroll over them. Also, if we click on this text view in here, I can see that some toast messages pop up, but I want to change the on-click listener from this text to all of this card view. For that, I can give an ID to my card view in here. Let's say book card. Then we need to define it in our adapter in this view holder class, like any other UI elements. Let's say card view, book card. We need to initialize it in here as well. Now we have access to this card in our bind view holder method. In here I can say holder.bookcard.setOnClickListener, and I can show the toast message in here. Also, I don't need this on-click listener for our text view. Let's run our application and see the difference. You can see that I can see the toast message by clicking anywhere on the card view. Up until now, we have passed some books in here to our recycler view adapter in order to see the result of our work. But in a real-world application, you probably need to access these books from a database or from a cloud server. We haven't talked about those topics yet. We will be talking about them, but for now I'm going to use some static methods and variables. You know from Java sessions, when we add static keyword in the definition of a method, or when we initialize some variable, that variable or method does not depend on the instances of that object. What that means is when you change the value of, for example, that variable in one place in your application, that static variable will be changed in all of your application. So because of that feature, we can use it instead of databases in this session. I'm going to create a utility class for all of those static methods and variables, and you'll see exactly what I mean. I'm going to call it util, just a simple Java class. Also, there is a term POJO, plain old Java object, which refers to these classes. These are plain old Java objects, or as some might say, POJO. In here, I will define a private static array list of kind book for all of my books. Let's call it all books. I need another one, private static array list of book for the currently reading books. Also another one for the want to read books, and one more for already read books. I have some typo here. Okay, I will create a simple constructor for this class which won't get anything. But inside this constructor, I need to initialize these static array lists because we are not initializing them in the fields. So if it's the first time that the user is calling this class, these static array lists are null, and we don't want to get some null pointer exceptions. For that, we are going to check and initialize them if they are not initialized. For that, I can say if all books is equal to null. We know that right now they are. We can say all books is equal to new array list. I'm going to do the same process for the 3 remaining array lists. Let's say if our currently reading books is equal to null, we'll initialize it. Notice that I'm putting this null at first. It doesn't matter where you put it. Even in some cases, this is the better practice. It's somehow called dynamic programming. You can prevent some errors and crashes, but I don't think we get one in here, so that doesn't matter where you put it. If null is equal to already read books, but if it's the first time that we are creating this class, we need to pass some values to this all books array list, because we are not getting those books from anywhere, for example, like a database or something. For that, I'm just going to pass them manually in here. I'm going to create a method and I'll write it down in here. Because we are going to access to a static variable, I need this method to be static. I will finish this method in the next video, but for now I'm going to leave it in here. But I think it's a good point to introduce something called to-do. Basically, to-dos are some special comments which the programmer leaves for himself or for other programmers that will see the code. For example, let's say initialize all books array list. Now, because its color is different from other lines of code, when I come back to this page, I can easily see this to do, and I know that this code is not done, and I need to pursue the command that is written in here. Also, there is a convenient pane in here which called to do. I can see all of the to dos in my program. For example, I have few of them in here. I don't know about this drawable v24. I didn't create it, but in here it's the to do that I just write it in here. Okay, let's move on. Next, I need to create some getters for all these static array lists. I'm going to create it for all of them. We need to access these methods. Also, I want to be able to add or remove from these array lists, except for the all books, because we are initializing it in here and user cannot add or remove anything to all of our books. For that, let's say public void add currently reading book. We are going to receive a book to add to our array list. In here, I can simply say currently reading books.add book. There is also a nice feature about this add method in array lists. If we hold down the control key and hover over this add, we can see some documentation, public boolean add, and the rest of it. It means that the output of this add method is a boolean. We can even click on it and see the detailed documentation and the work that is happening behind the scene in this array list class. Basically, this is some inner class in Java, and from here you can see what's happening behind the scenes. For example, in here it's adding the element, whatever it is, to the array list and then returning true. Means that the result of this method is true if and only if this element added to our array list. So we can use it in here. For example, we can say boolean is added is equal to currently reading dot add. and even we can return it via changing the output type of our method, and the return that is added. Or similarly, if you hover over this boolean, you can see that it says it's redundant, means that we can simplify it by saying return currently reading books.add and pass our book. If it successfully added this book, it will return true. And later on in our code, whenever we call this method, we can check that if it added to our array list or not. Okay, let's create the same for the other two remaining array lists. I'm going to copy and paste it two more times. Let's say want to read books, and in here as want to read books as well. In here I will say add already read book, and we'll change the name of our array list. Also, I need another method for removing objects from our array lists. Once again, I'm going to choose the output type of my method to boolean. Let's say remove currently reading book. I need to pass a book in here. Once again, I can return the currently reading books.remove book, which will return true if it successfully remove it, or false if it not. Okay, let's copy and paste it two more times. Let's say remove want to read method, book, and also for here remove already read book, and change here to already read books. Okay, I think that's all the necessary methods in here. In the next video, first we will initialize all of our books, and then implement some of these functionalities in our application. Okay, see you in that next video.